So welcome to the AT Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Levitt, and I have a fellow Brad with me, Brad Casebier. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's already a good start with that good name. So,
yeah, it's good to be a Brad.
Well, what's awesome, and the reason I really wanted to bring you on, I was very excited to have you on as a guest. And for those listening, Brad, he is the author of the Survival Guide to Working with Your Spouse. And you know, for all of us that are in a small business, entrepreneur, right? This is definitely a huge part of life for most of us. And so, Brad, I'm going to start there. I mean, just the book that you have, the topic, the reality that all of us deal with, what makes working with your spouse challenging?
Work's challenging enough, right? And then you work into a romantic relationship into the work environment, and it's all kinds of hard, and there's going to be conflict. Eventually you might want to have sex with this person. And so it's like, honestly, it's like, things get really, really, really intense and raw around work. And it's, it could be that your fortune could be completely lost. You go broke and people are making decisions you don't trust. It's a nightmare.
So, as you've consulted with people, and maybe look back at your own business, because you have a flourishing business. I mean, you've been very successful, and you and your wife working together. Without getting into the success you've had as a spouse, I mean, you touched upon this, that when you work with your spouse, there's no doubt there's the romantic, intimate side that you want to have at some point, but you have the work side. And then there has to be a clear separation of responsibility, accountability, because if one of you think like you're bossing the other one, I know I've dealt with that with work with my wife, and she's all Brad, quit bossing me around. So, that part's super tough to balance.
It is, and I think this is where the book comes in. Is it's very. I skipped all the chapters to tell you on why the book's going to help you. I just went straight into the meat of the stuff that worked for us. It's like, let's get to the point.
Right.
These are the things we applied that actually worked, and creating some real structure. And real roles and real responsibilities just cleans up a lot of those gray areas where you might be, we just would have a lot of conflict because you're in each other's lane, you're second guessing each other's decisions, and it's really inefficient.
So talk about that. I mean, from your side, Brad, how long was it that you and your wife were working together? Was it from the very beginning, or did it happen down the road?
Yeah, I started my business when I was 23, and we modeled my parents' business. My dad came to me one day and said, "You should start your own business. I think you do something different with it than I would." And he was a single operator construction company, and I was the only employee he had for any amount of time. And he's a craftsman. He loves doing it himself. And then my mom would handle the taxes. And so I wasn't really planning on this, and so I just decided to do it. And then by default, Sarah got the tax job because that's what your wife does. So she was just gifted with this job, and she agreed. But it wasn't like she didn't have any interest in this. She was just doing it to help out. And I think that's like the most common,
right?
Suck your spouse in story probably out there.
Yeah, I think that's really common. I think most people that are listening can relate that, they start a business, they have a venture, and in construction, a lot of us have grown up in the industry, family, relatives. So point of entry, and we talk about this a lot. The point of entry in construction is a little bit easier than most fields, right? Because if you have experience, you can go get your license, you can get started, you start building your marketing plan. So with so many small businesses out there, we are prone to, we start our business, we start to grow, we hire someone, we need some in-house help, we need back end, whatever it may be. Then our spouse comes into play, and then they're maybe doing accounting or design work or whatever it may be. And now you're just instantly like connected in every way.
That's it. I think it's a slippery slope, and there you are.
So from your side, and I guess to give a little context, because before we dive into the spouse side, for you, Brad, for Radiant Plumbing and Air Conditioning, right, which is your company. I mean, it's not a small company. I mean, how many employees do you have?
Over 250. I don't really know. It's a lot.
So what's fascinating to me, I mean, I look at my firm. So we're general contractors, 15 of us, and I think, okay, first off, 250 people. I mean, just speak about just how you organize that structure with 250 employees and keep that culture alive.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's That's a huge topic, and culture is just an absolute passion of mine. But it all starts with the same structure that's in this book. You get org chart, you get really clear on your roles and your vision, and you implement that, and then the husband and wife sit in all the seats in an org chart, and it almost seems silly when you're a company of two to build an org chart out, but you're crazy if you don't do it. It probably was the best thing that happened for our marriage, is because we got super clear on what all the roles in the business were, the ones that we wanted in the future, the ones we wanted to hire for sooner than later because we didn't enjoy, and then those org chart roles come with responsibilities, and you have this big conversation. You agree on, okay, if you're in charge of marketing, this is what the marketing person is responsible to deliver. Do you really want that? Yeah, okay, well, you're responsible now. And so the accountability is kind of built in when you have those kind of conversations.
So that's interesting. So before getting to the company structure, when you talk about, and this is what's unique about your book, I think most books, they counsel you, they have content, they have experiences, really the context there is what you're reading. But what's different about yours is you actually have a worksheet, you have a workbook. So, it's meant to be more hands-on for the user that's reading it.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I tend to forget to mention it. It's really important. This is this isn't designed to. It is a workbook. It's not designed for leisurely reading. Like, there's stuff to fill out, and you really should do it with your partner. Like, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, A, is don't get coaching, and then B, they get coaching by themselves and then try to sell their partner on it later. Do it together. If you're going to go to a conference, do it together. If you're going to go see a speaker, read a book, you should do it together and compare notes, because this is where so much conflict comes in. And I guarantee you, if anybody's worked with their spouse for any amount of time, they've had this experience, they come back super excited about all the stuff they've learned, which is really threatening to your partner. They're going to see you overly excited, and they're going to be like, no. I got to protect you from whatever it was, the snake oil that they sold you. And it's instant resistance, and you're in deadlock conflict again. And there was probably some magic in there. But if do it together. Read this book together. That's the upshot of it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because just even outside of the spouse relationship. So just a few weeks ago, I was at the CBUSA conference in Colorado, and CBUSA is like a national buying group for custom builders. It was just acquired by Builder Trend, but it's a select group of builders around the country. And the funny thing is, I was just having a conversation. There was a contractor from the Midwest, and he was telling me, you know what, Brad, the issue I struggle with, him and his brother had taken over the company from their dad. And so it's brother and brother. They're building this company. And he said, I've been really big on attending these conferences and networking and strategy. And I come to these things and I hear the economic people speak about the market and forecasting. And my brother doesn't come. I get back with all these ideas and he shuts them all down. So I get all this information and it gets shut down. So, it's similar whether you have a partner, whether you have a spouse. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. Like we had some friends that worked with Tony Robbins for years, and he was really adamant about this. He was like, if you do those events, he said, you come back, you've grown so much for the week you're gone, and your spouse is on a different plane, and it causes so much disruptions. Like, always go with your spouse. And it was, we just seen it. Over and over and over again. So definitely do it together, and then brainstorm, take away what you want, come back and implement that stuff, whatever you find.
So when you were creating the book, and especially the org chart and the workbook and everything, was this something that your wife had helped you with? How did that collaboration happen between the two of you?
The book?
Yeah, for the book itself.
We had the book. Well, ironically, we had some big fights about the book. We were going to write the book together, and really struggled with getting it off the ground. And I'm just I'm a writer. I like to write. It's just very natural and intuitive to me. I wake up in the morning and write. It's just like, this is not even a thing for me. And so I finally said, I'm going to just start writing some stuff. Is that okay? And she said, yes. And I was trying to write from the we perspective, and I couldn't even do it. I was so hard, because it was like, how do I write from try it sometime with somebody else who's going to really care about the we perspective. So I came back and I said, can I just write from the me perspective, and you look at the content, and then we change it later if you want. And I ended up writing the whole book, and then when it was all done, it's like, this is just your book, just run with it. So that's kind of how that all went. But I mean, we literally were out on a date, and like, I got so angry because we had some conflict about whose idea the book was. It's unbelievable. It's like, this is just so weird.
The funny thing is we can all relate.
Book.
You know, if I interrupt you, Brad, as you're talking about that, it's funny because we can all relate that there's these little things sometimes where it triggers and you're like, why? This isn't really important, and yet here we are.
The egos, it's a dreadful thing. It really is. But this really just became this thing that I just had to get done, and I think can really help a lot of people. So I needed to get it out. And then once it was out, we looked at it and we're like, yeah, I think this is a complete project. Let's just make it go live.
So then as far as the workbook, though, I would imagine that there was either trial and error. I mean, we're outside of the book itself where you have the worksheet. I mean, for you and your wife to sit down and really come up with a plan that we need to have roles. You know, this is your success story. What initiated that with your business, with Radiant, for you and Sarah to sit down and say, okay, we got to figure something out here?
The traction. Got to give a ton of props to the whole traction process. Gina Wickman's work is incredible, and we Sarah saw it. So I was the general manager, and the company was growing really fast and big, and it was terribly disorganized. And like our CRM is called Service Titan that we currently use, and I'm a real visionary marketing kind of a guy. I'm not a detailed operator. That's not where I'm passionate or good. I still to this day I just look at the dashboard on Titan. I don't want to know how to use it, don't care, not of interest to me. And so it was just a ton of conflict because she's trying to launch this product and the general manager doesn't even really care about it. And then we had really bad structure. We were sharing roles all over the place and people were reporting to both of us, and it was just a mess. And so she had two initiatives that she was super passionate about. One was getting our CRM fully implemented, and then secondly was to get a reporting structure in place. And she'd read Traction, got really excited about it. She kind of drugged me into that one, and we got a Traction facilitator and really rocked our worlds. And we got a major education on just healthy structure and roles and accountabilities around those roles.
You know, this is a really important topic because even outside of the spouse relationship, which, as you mentioned, when you're a small business, you're going to mix these roles together. But even if you're not working with your spouse and you have a partner or you have employees, I mean, there still has to be a clear distinction of roles, responsibilities, who they're accountable to, what their scope of work is, because for anyone to be successful, they really need to understand really what their work box is, what they need to be doing.
100%. Everybody from the delivery driver to the general manager, everybody needs to know what success looks like. And then the best part is when you get this right, all this is public information. The whole leadership team knows if somebody's delivering or not, and it's not, nobody gets a spanking or a public beatdown or like, why are your numbers off? It's a team of collaboration and help. It's like, seems like you're struggling for the last 3 or 4 days. What's going on with your team, and what have you tried? You know, and those are the way the conversations go because we want everybody to be successful. And so it's a super transparent culture that we've created with very public scorecards. Nobody's competing with each other. We're just, and I'll zoom back off of that just a little bit too. I don't build the budget or set the goals for our teams. We do that at a retreat, and I facilitate, and they build their own goals. And so when their numbers are off, they're not missing my numbers; they're missing their own numbers. And so I'm there to support them hitting their targets. Completely different mindset as you go into really, really moving your team fast and getting your managers engaged. Let them own it. Get out of their way.
So explain. I mean, the retreat's been interesting to me. I've heard other companies do, wellness week. They've done retreats. For the retreat, what does that entail? How far do you go? What's the whole context of that part of your organization?
The number one objective is building the budget for the upcoming year. So we're going to do ours in the second week of November this year. And we typically, we've got a problem because we've acquired a couple companies now and we've got too many leaders we want to be involved in. We can't find a mansion that will rent to us. It's with the size of group we have. And I dread to go to a hotel, but we don't have a choice this year. We got to find a better place to go. But up till now, we've always rented a really rockin' mansion, and you can get them for $1,500 a night for a couple nights, and you can sleep most of your team in there, and you can get the rest of the team in some room somewhere. And you just work together, and you dig back on what all your key KPIs are. What's your inbound calls, what's your close rates, average tickets, how many days do your guys work, just all the data that you can find, and then make your best guesses for every single month for the next year as to where you're going with this thing. And then the data gets better every year, because every time you try to build a budget, you realize, like, man, we're tracking that information, so I'm guessing. And so we leave really committed to capturing the reality of the metrics that we need for budgeting next year. So every year we get more and more refined as we do it.
It's interesting. I mean, the success of any business, right, is the accountability side. And really, this is what you've been alluding to, Brad, is, I look back at our structure and, being a new company and especially in construction, I look at it from the general contractor role. I know it's different when you're the trade partners you are, Brad, but from my side, as a management side, there was a lot of overlap, right? And this is what it gets to, that multiplication, of people doing the same job, overlapping. And so then there's this resistance, this inconsistency as a company. And when I noticed our controller came in, her name's McCall, and she said, Brad, we got to figure out our org chart, as you mentioned. We got to figure out what is the role, like when a project comes in, how does it go through the channel all the way, as you mentioned, from that first call, like CRM, from that first lead till we're completed? What is the transition? How's this going? As we laid it out, put it on a spreadsheet, we have it. Everyone understands their role. And once that's clearly defined, it's amazing how people can be accountable, by just having that information in front of them.
It's incredible. There's so much work to be done there. And it doesn't matter where your business is at. There's always more you could do. And if you, those are you dropped a couple of really great comments there. And one was just kind of the flow, the life of a call. Mm-hmm. Super interesting. And I'll tell you what's here's no big secret. Everybody's biggest limiting factor is hiring people, right? Right. So I'm gonna make a statement here that'll make people millions and millions of dollars if they'll listen to it.
Well, we better listen. You have 250 employees. You're doing something right.
If follow the chain of an applicant that comes to your company and see,
and what do you mean by that?
Steps say you got a recruiting ad out, and it's, for me, it's plumbers, or HVAC techs or whatever. I was at a Tony Robbins event, and he calls it the value chain. And he's just like, what's the most important thing in your business? And I was like, recruiting. Getting customers is so easy. Recruiting is the challenge. And so I did this work on this. He's like, so what happens with this, the minute you get that contact, like what's the flow, like from marketing all the way to hiring? And I realized there was probably like 13 handoffs that occurred at various levels. Emails were sent and just different steps. And it's like, if a plumber calls, I should just probably go straight to the manager. Like, why? Let's just throw all that away and let's get him right to the person he needs to talk to now. Because we're losing them in that journey, because they can get a job anywhere. So whoever's really quick. But we talk to techs all the time that, they didn't get a call back for days. One plumber is around $500,000 a year revenue to our company. So why wouldn't that be the most important phone call you have? So anyway, just food for thought. But that was,
so if I understand, this is interesting, because what you're saying is, Brad, so as people were applying to work for you and your firm, there was just a lot of, I don't want to say red tape, but there were a lot of transactions happening where it just took a lot of time to get to the right person to actually make the hire.
Yeah, dumb, super dumb, right? But it's like everybody's doing their process and all seems smart in the moment, but it's like, really, what we need to get this guy right in front of the person that's making a decision instantly, if possible.
Yeah, because if they're the right person, you can say, and you have a need, you need to fill that need right away. They can quantify it, they can qualify, and they can go through the resume and say, however your hiring procedure is can differ for everybody, but they could go through that channel and then, essentially start.
Yeah.
So then from that side, I mean, and this is important, I think, from the sales side that you and I were talking about, and the same thing should be done for all of us, is we have to understand when that lead comes in, right? It may be for you a cold call, my business could be from architect designer, a cold call as well. What's that journey? What is that timeline? What does it take from that call to permit to completion? What does it call for you from the point of service to diagnostic to service complete? I mean, whatever it is, I mean, you have to really understand that. How have you worked to understand and make part of your company successful?
The scorecards tell the tale, right? It's so if we've got a goal and we're not hitting a goal, something down the line is broken, and it could be the technician the team of technicians didn't have good close rates. That could trickle down to one or two guys just not doing well. It could be the average tickets are off and they need some more training on how to build their option sheets. And then go back to the CSR team, the people that answered the phones, like are they getting the right amount of calls? And then is their booking percentage high? Is the dispatch team dispatching intelligently? Are they putting the right people on jobs that they can be successful on? I mean, there's so many places to dig, and we have a daily huddle on a spreadsheet. It's on Google Drive, so it's virtual. I'm rarely in the office anymore, but I attend all my meetings virtually, and this is a whole year's worth of data, and it's over 300 lines of KPIs from the previous day. We look at it every single day at 10 a.m., and everybody knows exactly where they're at, every day.
It's interesting because you mentioned this. I actually made a note of this. You talked about the scorecard earlier. So is the scorecard based off of the retreat? So you go to the retreat, you create the goals for the next year, and then essentially you create that scorecard, and now this is what you're tracking?
Yeah, the one for the management team is, and so we build the yearly budget, which is broken into months, and then we take that same budget and divide it by the number of days in the month, and that's what goes into that daily huddle. So it's the same numbers every single time, but scorecards go beyond this. That's just the manager's specific one. Like the technicians will have their own individual scorecard. Literally, the delivery drivers have a scorecard. Their times, how many deliveries they get done in a day, what was their average time at the supply house, things of that nature. So we think every individual deserves to know if he's succeeding or not.
It's interesting. So, and this is really important. I've spoken about this so many times on the podcast, but this is really what employees need to have to feel successful, right? They need to believe in what they're doing. They need to have believe in the product. They need to believe in the company, believe in the culture. All those things kind of play together. And number two is, as we've talked about, they need to understand the role. They need to understand how they're accountable. They need to understand, right, what they should be doing every day. And so for you, understanding the scorecard's valuable from the manager side. How, with 250 employees, how are you delegating where each employee, each mechanic or each mechanical and tech, each plumber is getting that feedback, understanding how they're tracking individually?
Yep. Well, it just grew to scale, so we believe in about a 10-to-1 ratio of manager to employee. And so we're monitoring that all the time. And the guys, there's always kind of pinch points as you're growing where we'll have a manager that's got like 14. And we're starting to see some redlining occurring at 14. That's just too many people to really keep contact with. And I can't express to you how important it is for these employees to feel like they've got a relationship with their manager. So everybody gets a one-on-one in the entire company. They get an hour of the manager's time. So if you've got 14 employees, that's 14 hours of your week are already spoken for through one-on-ones. So you just think about all the other duties they have. But that hour is the employee's time to. We do look at their scorecard, and then it's really the floor is there. How can I support you? That's the conversation, and that's that we found that to be huge for retention. People get a chance to be heard and feel connected to what's going on. I mean, when we start seeing people drop off, the number one complaint is that they just don't feel like they were being heard.
It's interesting. I mean, that is why most people leave, right? They feel lack of training. They feel like they weren't heard. that satisfaction and feedback, right, was not there. And a lot of us get so busy in our tasks, right? I mean, it's something that we let go and we don't really focus on. We're focusing in, like you, Brad, or myself. I mean, you have so many other responsibilities that it's hard to give the time that maybe they need unless you have your structure set up correctly.
Yeah.
So, going back to the spouse side for you and your spouse, I mean, right now you're at 250 employees and we understand the role. I mean, how early on, or I should say this, how big was your company when your wife really got involved?
So, yeah, I can help with that. I don't have dates, but
dates don't matter. I'm just curious on like size and structure wise.
I'm thinking we were doing probably maybe at $400,000 a year, $500,000 a year. It was all new construction, and I'd hired 5 or 6 employees. Just bear in mind, I just said earlier that one plumber can bring in $500,000 a year, right. And 5 or 6. Right. See, there's a little problem there.
Yeah. Cash flow becomes a challenge at that point.
Oh, that's what she kept telling me. I didn't know because I wasn't in the books. I didn't know anything about them. So
yeah, you're thinking I'm hiring, I'm winning these jobs, everything's great, and you have no idea.
All this money's coming in. Yeah, where does it go? And so she was just like freaking out. She was like, dude, this doesn't work. And she's an RN. She's got a career as a labor and delivery nurse, and she's doing my stuff on the side. And you got now employees and payroll and all this malarkey that goes with that. I mean, it got kind of complex real quick. And I asked her one day, I said, what if you just jumped on board full time when we took this seriously? Like, I feel like our careers are really conflicting, and they were. It was because she had crazy hours and I was getting more and more responsibilities. And we had 3 kids at the time, so it was just a zoo. And she thought about it. She's like, I'm kind of done with the hospital thing. It's kind of a soulless machine anyways, so I'd love to build something that was mine. That sounds amazing. And so she's the smart one. She immediately got on the internet, found Service Roundtable and amazing coaches there, giving away free information. And she just kept, every night I'd come home and she'd tell me all this stuff. And she eventually went to a Better Practices group called Nexstar, had an event in Buffalo, New York. That's where I'm at today. I was actually speaking at their event.
Oh, amazing.
Earlier. Yeah, really kind of fun.
That's cool. Kind of circle. Full circle that now you're speaking.
So she goes as a guest as a total stranger and sees the shop's $8 million a year in revenue, shiny trucks and material bins and warehouse. Everything's immaculate. And she's talking about there's this, every net profit. There's this thing called net profit. It's like money left over after you've paid everybody. And like, leftover money seems crazy. That's how backwards I was. I swear. I mean, like, I had no clue. I was a great craftsman and I could inspire the team to do amazing stuff, but I just didn't have a clue. Well,
it's not and real quick if I interrupt you, I mean, the reality is to that, Brad, is that it's not like there's education on this. I mean, we have to figure it out, like Hard Knocks. And it's, that's one of the issues without going down this rabbit hole of the education system. It's not like we spend time talking about how to run a business. That's the biggest complaint. You go to design school, architecture school, trade school, whatever. It's not like they teach you, hey, Brad, here's how you run your business. Here's how, to effectively manage cash flow. I mean, we just have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so she jumped in, both feet, got all that education. But before we get there, this is really important. I was super intimidated by these stories. Like I told her I was like really bothered, and she was like, "You don't want to do this?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I seem smart, but I'm uncomfortable." And it took me days, and I finally came to her and I said, "Here's the truth. To be honest, I see your vision, and I don't see where I fit in it. I don't see how I can do any of that. That's my problem." And it was just I kind of realized how little belief I had in myself or even knew if I had the desire to learn all that stuff, but it just seemed so out of my grasp. And so she just ran with the torch. And I finally, slowly woke up. And then one day I decided I was enough for this and hit the afterburners and never looked back.
It's an amazing story, and I think most of us listening can relate, especially life as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, there's so many hats you have to wear, and at times it can become very discouraging. And then when you think about what I should be doing, where my company should be, why am I not there? And I've been working at this a long time, and it becomes overwhelming. And it's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? It's hard to really, but mentally it's hard to get yourself there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's the belief, our belief in ourselves is, I think we all limit ourselves and still are to some degrees. I still find myself walking into rooms pretty nervous of asking myself if I belong there. And my new thing is I belong everywhere, and I just keep stepping into rooms that I don't feel comfortable in, just to force myself to belong.
Well, I think there's a lot of confidence there just to have that mentality, I belong everywhere. So I think this is interesting, because now understanding a little bit of the dynamic there as you're growing, a small company, trying to figure it out, the revenue as opposed to how many employees you have, as opposed to the roles. And then your wife's coming in and saying, okay, we need to fix the structure. So from that point, all of us have different talents, right? There's different successes, talents, things that we enjoy doing. So did you find it easy at that point now to say, okay, your wife, Sarah, right? So for you and Sarah to say, okay, you focus on this, I'll focus on this. I mean, how easy was that transition to now separate, church and state essentially?
It's horrible. Super hard. So for first off, step one is she felt like I needed to let go of being the general manager, and a little ego tied up with that.
Yeah.
And so her and the traction coach kind of colluded and were convincing me that if you get an attraction, there's a visionary, and the visionary has the vision. But the integrator, who's the general manager, does everything. And it's like, so I'm kind of like this kind of Oz mystic character that kind of sees the future and does marketing. And I was overseeing sales as well, but it was still, it hurt. I didn't want to give that up. But then we had this conversation over and over again. One day I say, I think what you're trying to tell me is you can do a better job than I can at this. And she's like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, so I leaned into the discomfort, and it hurt. And you know what, you do it, just run with it. And I kind of made myself, to help salve my wounds on that, I was like, this is a life experience she needs. She wants to run with this torch and own that. She's worked so hard with all the coaching. She's gotten she's a monster. She's done so much work to become so powerful. And she feels like I'm in her way of being successful, and that's not really fair. Why shouldn't she get a run at this? And so I just like, you know what, I'm going to just let her have it, And so she ran it for years, and we worked together, and I was way more involved with the kids. I got really good at cooking.
So she was actually working as general manager then. I mean, she was running it.
I'm literally let her have that. Yeah. I mean, it was really it's cool. She wanted it, and she did great.
So how did that change your role though at the time with the company?
Again, I'm the visionary, so I still had a strong say in what was going on, and they still used me a lot for, kind of I've got this wild creative side that's useful for a lot of different things, and so I was a tool that was used. And then like marketing, that's totally my mastery, and then I'm deeply involved with the sales team and ramping up what their activities were. So I was very, very busy, but just not. But again, she's implementing the CRM. She's getting the traction process all set up and getting the meeting structure right, and building out those scorecards and building all of it. Just getting the structure in. That's what she's so good at. And so at one day, just time had gone on, and she was just feeling, I think, unsatisfied and not really enjoying it that much. And there were some personalities that we had in the business that just needed some corralling, I would say. And one day I just got really passionate, and I was just like, I need to take the reins. I need to be the one. I'm the one for now. This company needs me to take it to where it needs to go now. And she literally cheered on the other end of the phone, and I cried. I'm driving down the road, and it was like this amazing moment where we just like had this huge, amazing emotional moment where we just knew it was time for another era. And she was so excited to see me step up, because she just was tired and wanted to help, and she did so good and carried it for so long. But it was just like, again, it was a new era, and it's time for a new leader.
Well, do you feel that helped not only the company, but your relationship and just the structure? And the reason I say that, I mean, you think, I look at some of these large corporations like GE, General Electric, right, and other companies where what they do is when they bring in an employee, they'll put them in different parts of the organization, 6 months here, 6 months here. So they really learn what they're good at, what they're successful at. And then by having an understanding, and I liken it this way, if you've been a superintendent or you've been a coordinator, you've been in accounting, I mean, you understand these different roles and responsibilities, and now you understand how they work together. Do you feel that helped now her running the organizational role? You had done it before, that now, hey, there's a lot of synergy now between us.
I think so. I think people can get hung up on that too. Our business scales fast. I mean, we're moving really fast. Like we're going from 34 to over $50 million in revenue in the Austin location alone. So I mean, It's like an insane, it's wild. And so what you knew as a service manager, which involved a lot of technical stuff, that still matters in that role, right? But then there's a department director who doesn't need to know all the things that the manager needs to know. And then there's a COO now who doesn't need to know all the minutia that the service man, you know what I mean? So it's like there's these new skills of leadership. And so your ability to, these higher level roles are very tactical and very good with dealing with people and solving problems. Like I don't know, we have a huge air conditioning department. I don't know anything. I'm not an air conditioner. I couldn't fix your AC,
Yeah.
So, but we can sure do some business around it, and I've got the guys that can do that. So, but I think people do get hung up. The craftsman side of us is really committed to those knowledges. And then when you start getting into the tens of millions of dollars of business, all of a sudden those skills, they stay down here, and then new skills are required. And it's a never-ending growth process. Yeah,
there's no doubt about that. And I know that is a clear distinction of the direction I was going, because the reality is, as you grow, and as you're mentioning, as this happens, Brad, for you to really be successful as a company, even at your size, I mean, you have to have people that are highly skilled, highly motivated, highly educated, right, in their field and craft. You can't know everything. I mean, you can't. You just can't be successful. You can't control every task, and you have to be able to delegate and make them accountable and empower them to be able to be successful at what they're doing.
Yeah, going from the mom and pop, that's so scary, because again, your name's in every single org chart box, and you got to give that away, and they may mess up and fail even some, and you've got to nurse them through that, or make sure you got the right person, and yeah, it's hard, and your livelihood depends on it. The smaller you are, the scarier it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just this week, we have a new project we're doing, and the designer, Caitlin Wolf, came in from Iconic, and she was telling me, we're speaking about the success of her company and organization, and almost to what you're alluding to, Brad. And she had said, we're at a point now, there's 8 of them at her company, and she also does a little bit general contractor work, which is pretty neat. But she said, we're at a point now where my team, they're taking care of issues and items and protocol and all this stuff. And I'm not even on the email. All of a sudden I figured out their result, and I'm like, wow. I mean, she's like, it's just this enlightening where you see them really do this as if she would have done it herself.
100%. Like that's the IT side of my business and warehouse. I don't want to know. I just want it all to work and be better. Please don't tell me the details.
So in addition to, getting back to working with your spouse to find success there, I understand, we've spent some time about the organizational chart, understanding your role, understanding how that's delegated. What are other things that spouses can do? And maybe taking you down this road, the hardest thing is when I look at it with employees, hey, you're at lunch together, you're talking about work. You're hanging out after work at a baseball game or a golf outing, you're talking about work. So how do you create that separation where you can have some personal time outside the business?
I've wrote exactly 0 pages in the book on that. I don't know. I'm not.
Have you found any way to do that with you and your wife to separate that at all?
No, we don't want to. We don't find ourselves even trying. We love our work. We enjoy it. It's fun for us, and we have some kids involved, and this is our hobby too. And so and again, like I do it separate. You have the 6 o'clock rule or whatever you want. I don't care. My book doesn't have anything on that. And I personally think everybody make their own call on how they want that to be. I will say, we started our business in 95 with me and a shovel and we'll be over $50 million a year in revenue this year. We just got purchased by a PE firm, and we're doing acquisitions all over the U.S. right now. We've got, it's
really cool.
Yeah. And that came at a heavy price of work. I mean, it's like you're going to throttle. You're not going to get these results working 40 hours a week. That's not real. Literally, just forget that. We both work 60 plus hours a week every week. Talk about it all night. Talk about it on the weekends. Our vacations are kind of connected to work half the time. I mean, we're in Florida, Marco Island right now at an event I'm speaking at and doing some work with the team on, and our kids are here. You know, you guys want to go to Florida?
Yeah. So you make the most of it, and what I like about that, I mean, one thing I'll say that we've done, my wife and I, is you become more understanding. I should say in some ways where. With her design business, my contracting business, we understand, the client needs, the client perspective. And so there's times where maybe in the evening or the weekend or family vacation, and I may be like, I have this call, this Zoom call or this meeting. I got to take care of this issue with this client. And it's really, okay, I got the kids. I got this. You go do it. And I'm the same way where, she may have something in the evening or on the weekend where it's our alone time, but I'm like, let me take the kids. Don't worry. Go focus on that. So really there's a clear, hey, I have your back, I support you, and then that helps as well.
100%. Yeah, that's so cool.
And then from your side, it's fun when you could take the kids with you. You're speaking, hey, we're going to Marco Island, and that's not a bad place to take the family either, to make it part of a little work play.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I think giving your spouse some grace and just really knowing where their boundaries are, like what I find is, so Sarah likes to just pop in and say, let me tell you about this, and like I'm locked on solving something right now, and it's just kind of like this is kind of my move. I do this real slow kind of stern turn, and I'm just like, okay, and then she's awesome because she'll be like, is now a good time? It's like, can we do it a little later? Because it's just like, that can be so disruptive when you're trying to really put something big together, and just really understanding each other and giving each other some grace to what they're dealing with in that moment. It's just like, maybe this could be a tomorrow thing. And so here's a really cool tool. This is the coolest. We use, so when we do traction, it's a process of problem solving and meeting structure. And we use this service called Basecamp. And we've got in a list, basically. It's a shared file drive where we can go in and we put issues, ideas, and opportunities in there. So if there's an issue, I don't have to tell Sarah, or she doesn't have to tell me. She can just drop it in the issues list. And we have a weekly meeting every single week with the leadership team. And we go through every single one of those issues every week. And so you have this like panic, I don't want to forget this at 10 o'clock at night. You don't have to tell them that. You can go pop it into the drive, and it'll be handled at an appropriate time. You get it out of your head, and you didn't impose it upon your spouse, which is totally awesome. So we use that tool a lot.
Basecamp's a great program. We've used that with marketing firms and some other firms I've worked with, and it's a great thing, especially as there's multiple people involved. You can delegate responsibilities, and as you mentioned, if you have something out there that you need to address or have some closure on, you can put it out there for when the other user is ready to address it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And we just are very disciplined about the meeting pace. Every week it gets handled, and we go through every issue every week, and no balls are dropped. And so it's a great place to park something that's bothering you.
And I can relate to, it's funny, for me, I have to be clear. I think what's really important for us as well is to set the expectation with our spouse or coworker, whatever it may be, on what breeds success for us. And what I mean by that is I look at it for me where I'm kind of an outcome guy in the sense that when there's an issue, I just want to solve. And maybe part of that's the male in me. But for example, like if there's, I don't want to say litigation, but maybe there's something outlined, a big problem, a crisis. Maybe there's a cost. Maybe there's something I'm going to have to eat because of a mistake. I mean, for me, it's like, I just want to know, okay, is this going to cost me $6,000? And then I can get over to move on, right? It's the unknown saying, okay, is this going to cost me $20,000, $6,000, $2,000? I mean, and my wife knows that about me, that it's like, okay, if Brad can put closure on this and at least just know what the outcome will be, then he can move past it and he's off to the next one, right? And I think that's important too.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It is. Coming with some solutions or ideas is super helpful too. So I think I've quoted Tony Robbins 3 times. This will be the 3rd time tonight, but I'm a fan. Learned some good stuff from this guy, but he said this amazing thing once. He said, we've really got it figured out with business about, whatever it takes to deliver this spectacular customer service. I mean, we'll do whatever the customer needs. We're going to create this extraordinary experience for a customer. He said, imagine what your relationship would be like if you approached your relationship like that. I'm going to provide an extraordinary service to my spouse. Like, holy crap, right? Like, what would that be like? What would the response be like if you really were that focused on, we focus so well on delivering that excellence in our, but these comments we're making are kind of, little glimmers of that. It's like, how do I make this experience great for my spouse? And not just throwing stuff at them to absorb.
It's interesting. I love that you shared that because it really, as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of work I have to do there, right? Because I think about that customer service experience that we're giving our customer and the attention to detail and the kindness, whatever it may be, the patience. Are we reciprocating that in our own personal life with my team, with my members, at home? And, that's it's powerful food for thought for sure.
It is huge. I really rocked my world. It's like, oof, I got some room to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. I mean, how do you deal with the failure side? I mean, the reality is, and this is a 2-part question. How do you deal with failure personally? Because that happens to all of us. And then, with your business, how do you deal with it together too when it now impacts both you and your spouse as you're working together?
Grace, man. I think, so here's one of the things that I think is super interesting. I've addressed in the book. I've never heard anybody really have this conversation before, but I think if you're in it for your spouse, if you're like, I really care about Sarah, and I want Sarah to have the ultimate life experience. I really want that for her. So like when she needed to be the general manager, that was kind of the conversation I was having in my mind. It's like, this is uncomfortable, but I want her to have the life that she can look back and say, I did everything I wanted to do and I don't have any regrets, whatever that is. And so if like, it'd probably be the same for a son or a daughter too, right? Like if I had a son that was like, man, I want to be the marketing guy, Dad, I would probably have a very similar feeling on this. And it's like, okay, let me help you, mentor you, coach you, and get you where you need to be. But in the end, you got to let somebody run with the ball. And they're going to have different ideas. And sometimes those just have to be tested out. Sarah and I had a huge disagreement on, like in our service industry, a lot of people have memberships, service agreements. Or
monthly agreements, maintenance agreements.
Exactly. And our company's weird because our marketing works way too good. We have too many demand customers, but the industry told us we needed these memberships, and I was like, "This is dumb. We don't need these memberships. I hate these memberships." And so, but she's the good student who listens to all of her coaches, and I'm the visionary, revolutionary guy that kind of is like, screw the system. That's a little bit more my style. And so I really went, I just wrote it. I literally wrote a manifesto, and it's like why I hate service agreements. It's like a 4-page article. I was going to send it to a magazine. I realized I didn't want to get murdered at one of these events. But she said, I get it, your point, and I think we shouldn't do it though. I think you're wrong. And I was like, can you just let me run with this and trust me? And she said, yes. After some long discussion, very polite, but you could just see though, she was so torn because she's so committed to these wise mentors that got us here. All told her that this is how you do it, and all my stuff made sense, but it was just so hard for her to trust me, even when my logical breakdown. But she was like, same deal. She was like, you've got to do this. Obviously, you've got to do this. So do it, And it was like, I can't tell you what that felt like in my heart to see my wife give something like that and trust, and it's her livelihood, it's her business too, and all this work that she's done. She's going to trust me to run with this really revolutionary idea. It totally worked, by the way. It was the best move ever. So I didn't fail on that one, thank God. But it's scary, because it matters. All these things really matter. And when you're going to do something really bold and your spouse isn't for sure on board, man, you really go for it, But you are going to fail, and that's part of it. But I think if you really love each other, you're going to pick each other up and learn from it and keep going forward. I think that's all you can do.
Do you feel it's different, the conversation you have as you're dealing with failures or setbacks with your spouse? Is it different to how you communicate that maybe with your employees or your managers?
I don't think so. We're just really, everybody that works for us is, if you don't feel like family, you probably don't belong here, because we just have this we are all on the same mission to get the same objectives done, and we collaborate, we share ideas, we disagree sometimes, we find a resolution, and then we get stuff done. And it's like, the relationships are pretty similar in my company. So I don't know for other people, but for us, it's very similar.
So how have you found success building that company culture? The reason I know I saw a video, and I think they're like playing dodgeball there in your lobby or something, but how do you find this like collaboration where there is a lot of fun, but there's a lot of work hard, play hard mentality?
You've got to create it as a leader. It's your job as a leader to create it. And to, I think vulnerability is an absolute superpower. If I'm hiding stuff and putting up a front to my employees, and I have like this identity that I let them see, and like we're transparent and we're very clear. Like the goals are clear, the money's clear, everybody knows what's going on within the business. There's no secrets. And I just lead with vulnerability. It's like, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. This is the thing I'm working on. These are the problems in our business that we'd like to solve, and let's solve them together, and everybody, like, for the common good here, let's make this place better. And if we do, there's promotions for people, there's more money for people, and we can all get something amazing out of this ride, But if we don't grow, if we don't expand, then we stagnate, and your job's your job forever, and then you have to quit to go get a promotion. You can't get one here. And that's not what we're about. So everybody's really bought into that idea in leadership, and so they're equally passionate too, because they see their future growing. And but it really starts with me really creating this warm, friendly culture, and just being warm and friendly myself. You got to be it, and then it reflects back at you.
So essentially, I mean, if that warm, friendly, being approachable, I mean, just having, that clear vision, as you mentioned, having that clear vision where people know, hey, this is what I could do financially, this is what I can do career-wise. I mean, and so the opportunities laid out for them clearly, where just that in itself is going to help create that culture, along with some of the other fun things that you may do.
Yeah, the fun things are nice, but it's like, I think people think culture is getting a ping pong table, and I have a ping pong table, and it's fun. We don't use it very often, but really, the culture is what is the collective body really like, and here's where culture gets so corrupted in our business, is we get excited about our goals. And this is the real dichotomy, because I want to grow really fast, right? And we all get excited about that. But then the minute hitting $50 million becomes the most important thing, I'm going to start hiring people that don't belong, which instantaneously corrupts your culture. Like, and your existing employees know you're compromising, because these people don't belong here. They're not radiant material. And that can't happen. You have to be committed to the right individual every time. And it's like, so if I interview 10, you don't hire the best of the 10, you hire the right person. And if you interview another 10, you can find the right person. But I see that mistake more often than any other, probably, is people just like, they got to hit and there's points in your career where you might have to survive. You might have to tolerate an employee that, but I would challenge you to be super brave and let that person go. because you're going to lose the good ones because you're keeping the bad one, and that's even worse.
I think that's probably some of the sharpest advice. Not that you haven't given out nuggets this entire conversation, Brad, but the reality is every successful CEO that I've ever spoken with in my entire career, it's been the same thing. Like, that culture, when it's not about hiring the people that are most experienced, it's about hiring the right people, right? Because that bad person, they may be really talented, but they can be a cancer to the entire company, and you can just be torn down from within by not having the right people on the ship.
It's insidious. It really is. And then, you've got the invisible leaders that are leading in the background.
The shadow leadership, right?
Dude, undermining everything. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
You gotta get those guys out as fast as you can.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, but I mean, there's a few things you brought up in the book, and you had talked about as well, just from the working with your spouse, you talked about how you align your visions, knowing your role, and the difference between the business and your relationship, which I think is really valuable. But another point was you talked about the business owner's mindset, from craftsman to entrepreneurship to legacy seeker. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I've not seen a lot of work on this concept, and my goal with the book is just try to. Our unconscious minds drive so much of our activities. Unconsciously, we're making decisions, doing things. So starting with the visioning exercise, like getting from unconscious, what I'm trying to build, to conscious and communicated clearly so we both know where we're going. This is the enormous starting point. So then I just wanted to kind of expose these concepts to some couples that might have really different mindsets. Because if you're a craftsman and you're passionate about the art and the way it's done, and my dad's a craftsman, and I have a lot of craftsmen in me, and I get it. And that's good. That's all really good. But an entrepreneur is it's a very different animal. And this person is like a serial business starter, and they just have ideas and they want to get something going. They don't really want to stay there very long. They just want to do something big and then get away from it and go do something else big, And there's a lot of conflict that's going to occur with these different mindsets. But it also can be an incredible collaboration if you get the entrepreneurial mindset with the craftsman. But knowing that we're going to be having some friction because we see the world differently. So the goal is just to try to shed some light on that to help couples understand where the other one's coming from, so we're communicating a little bit more clearly. And the last one's the legacy seeker is just. I've just have some of these around me, and it's just interesting because they make decisions on such a different wavelength because they're thinking about what their kids are going to do and grandkids, and it's like I don't think that way at all. Like my kids are on their own. I was on my own. I mean, you just go do your life, and I want you to have your best ultimate life experience, whatever that adventure is for you. I'm not going to build a job for you though.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's my duty, but that some people really carry that burden, and they can't perceive the world any other way. That this is my obligation is to create something for my kids. It's like, okay, you need to know that.
So it's interesting. So it's understanding that definition, right, of what that means to you, that legacy, whether it's, individual, family, whether it's others, and then how do you incorporate that into the structure of the company?
Yeah, and just so you understand each other, and you really, really try. And there's nothing wrong with any one of those ways of thinking. You want to be supportive of, whatever this person's drive is, and make sure that you're getting what you need out of it and they're getting what they need out of it. But you can build something. Everybody's going to build something different for different reasons.
So in closing here, I mean, you've already shared some amazing advice you've been given, especially some of the quotes by Tony Robbins. But, what advice would you give to someone starting a company? What advice would you give yourself, looking back as you and Sarah are starting that journey from the beginning?
I think that the most important thing, first, you should buy the book. I think it'll help you. It's like super cheap. And then and get coaching together. I think that's the most. There's somebody has solved it in your industry. There's some mentor. There's some group out there, and they might even charge you some money, and you should fork it over because it'll be the cheapest thing you ever invested in. I've never invested in coaching where I was like disappointed. I've always gotten multiples back on every single thing we've ever done, and often the more we spend, the better it is. So, get any kind of coaching you can get. This is a short ride. You've got a few years to get stuff done, and you're just wasting time if you're not leaning into coaching.
Well, what's interesting is that mentorship, the coaching side, right, that everyone needs. And you mentioned this earlier in the episode, that if your team doesn't have scorecards, if they don't have accountability, right, they're not going to progress as individuals in the company. And who's going to make us accountable other than a coach or someone that can be at this level that's going to really mentor us and help us in our field? I just think that's super valuable, Brad. And so, what do you have that's upcoming and exciting now? You alluded to a little bit, especially with the private equity firm, as you're expanding. What does that look like, and what excites you now for the future?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, going all the way back, I really learned early I needed to not be the limitation to our company's growth, and so I had to educate myself to stay ahead of that. And that's books and podcasts and coaching and lots of different things. So it's still continuing because this new world. So we sold 80-something% of our business to private equity firms. So we're a minority owner now, which means I have a boss, which is a board of directors. And they're lovely. It's a great team. They've taken really great care of us and been very kind while we learn this new game. So I'm the CEO on the go forward, and we've got an acquisition in San Antonio. We just closed one in Denver. We've got several really cool ones in the pipeline all over the U.S. And so I'm on a plane a lot these days, and it's just really, really cool to learn all this neat stuff. And we got some really great processes in Radiant. We're wanting to share those with the companies we bring in. And the one in San Antonio, we watched just extraordinary results just after like 3 or 4 weeks of training with their team, like doubling, tripling, kind of exponential performance enhancement. So that was really gratifying. And I think there's a part of me that really wanted to test what we did in Austin somewhere else and just say, I'd kind of like to just prove that it.
Yeah, was this a one-off or is it a really successful method? Yeah.
Ego. It's all just ego. But I want to do it. So there you go. But it's fun, and it's it's not about money anymore. That part's done. It's really fun and exciting and a new challenge. And it was funny because that's a super strange experience because one day some money was wired and financially our lives are never going to be the same. And that's weird because we'll never need to work again. I wouldn't need to for 3 lifetimes. And it's like, what am I doing with my life now? It's another really unsettling identity kind of a moment. And I just woke up one night after a few months of just trying to figure out what it was about and realized it's like this was the voice, it's like you haven't learned what you need to learn yet to do the next thing that you need to do. And it's like, okay.
And that's to the point.
I'm here to learn.
Yeah, here to learn. What's the legacy? Giving back, just as you mentioned and you spoke about in your book and here now. And it's just amazing, Brad. Such a wealth of knowledge, from the systems and how to be successful with your spouse. And so, especially as you, with the new acquisition and where you're heading now, where can our listeners find you?
We have a website, it's bradsarah.com. And you can reach us there. And then on Facebook, I think it's the Survival Guide to Working with Your Spouse on Facebook. Yeah. Love to see you there. And we're going to start doing some interviews of couple focused interviews. And I think that's going to be really fun. I hope they do some crazy interventions. I don't know. We'll see. I'd love it to get scrappy. But that's kind of, and again, that's like, this is just kind of a fun project for me. We're totally just doing this for fun and just because I think it's a cool thing to do. And if we're lucky at all, a few people get some real serious help out of this and go through the pain a lot faster than we did.
Which is super valuable. So Brad, thank you again. Really appreciate making time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.